Welcome to the Sooners360 Recruiting Podcast. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruit analyst for Sooners360. This video is sponsored by Sooners360 on Patreon. To support this video, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content over there. The link will also be in the description below. And Sooners360 is part of the Believe podcast network. Every team, every topic, everywhere. This video covers the recent commitment to OU by 2025 defensive tackle Floyd Boucard, who's currently playing football at Miami Central this fall, but he is originally from Connecticut. So let's talk about Floyd's recruiting process a little bit first. He took 4 official visits. At least he had 4 finalists. He may have taken an additional official visit. I'm not quite sure there. But his 4 finalists that he took official visits to were USC, Bama, Miami, and Oklahoma. In addition, he had a bunch of national offers, maybe upwards of 25 to 30 Power 4 offers, including UGA, Penn State, Oregon, and other programs. He took his only visit to OU was his official visit, and that was on 6/14. And OU's recruiting process started with him in January. Todd Bates and Brent Venables were on a scouting evaluation trip for 2025 prospects during the January recruiting window, because they'd already locked down the 2024 class. And they were able to meet Floyd off, and previously they'd offered Floyd, seen his film, and Todd Bates was one of the early folks to look at that. So OU was really the first blue blood to offer. When OU offered Floyd, he'd had a couple of ACC offers, I think principally from Boston College and I think Syracuse. So he hadn't quite hit in the big time yet from sort of blue blood football programs. So OU was first, and I think that ended up playing a factor in his recruiting, that OU, was there the longest, the most consistent program recruiting him. So he didn't take an unofficial visit to OU. Floyd has a unique circumstance. He played at Mobile Christian High School for his junior year. He was basically an exchange student who moved down from Quebec, Canada. He's from Quebec. His family's originally from Haiti, emigrated to Canada. So they I think his family or family friends was able to connect, basically create like an exchange student kind of experience for Floyd, where he was able to play football and played football at Mobile Christian. Then they were able to, I think, arrange a different opportunity for him to get a slightly more exposure, higher level of competition. And he was able to move down to Miami Central. And he's, again, sort of an exchange student down there, living with family friends or a family connection. So he's not a Miami Central kid who grew up. Miami Central is a pipeline to Miami. So a lot of people thought that he was going to choose Miami based upon that fact, which, Reuben Bain did that. So it makes a lot of sense to maybe assume that. But he's not from Miami. He's not like he doesn't. His family hasn't moved to Miami. He did his commitment announcement from Quebec with all of his family. He went back to Quebec to do that. So, so the biggest sort of hurdle for OU appeared to have been a USC visit, which occurred right before his OU visit on 6/14. USC kind of rolled out the big red carpet, glitz and glam from what everybody said, and also their new D-line coach, Henderson, has some connections with Aaron Donald and was able to, I think, connect Floyd to Aaron Donald. And, obviously, if you're a defensive tackle, Aaron Donald is sort of, if you want to be compared or model your game after anybody, Aaron Donald is like a great place to start. So OU had to sort of overcome that USC visit. And as we all know from the Lincoln Riley recruiting pattern, there's a lot of heavy pressure, grab an early verbal from a kid, and then just sort of hold on. So he was stringing out that game again. But, when I had a chance to talk to Floyd once in February, a great kid, I had a quick 10-minute conversation with him. And if it was possible through that just one interaction, that one phone call, it was very clear that Todd Bates and Brent Venables had made a real impact with Floyd in terms of their the whole OU culture experience, make you a better player on the field and make you a better person off the field. That whole soul mission. Floyd's a very spiritual person. I think Brent and Todd probably found some commonality there. They're as authentic as it gets, I think, on that topic. I'm not sure all coaches are, but, Brent and Todd seem to be, I trusted them in terms of their authenticity around that topic. So they made a real impact with Floyd. So when he got on campus, I think all of those experiences and all of that culture and community just clicked with Floyd. It just reinforced what he had thought when they had first talked to him and first offered, that they would, that I could trust these guys. These coaches want to make me a better player and better person that fits my family values, that fits, my values and what my family wants. And I think that visit along probably helped Daniel Ekin-Kimmy, I think probably was helped that weekend. He was recruiting Michael Fasusi, but I think he probably also helped as well. That's kind of floating around. I think Trent Wilson, the other 2025 defensive tackle visiting that weekend, probably also helped a little bit. Just because Trent was very much, saw OU once in the spring on an unofficial visit and then verbaled stunning Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. So, I think just the bodies there and the camaraderie, and you could tell that, in his uniform photo spread that they do with all the recruits, in several of the photos, he took which is a little bit of a, look at me, this is me, it's a little bit of an ego trip that the coaches that during recruiting. I mean, it just is. Let's just call it what it is. Let's put on this jersey, see what I look like as a Sooner, and it's a little bit of an ego trip there. Well, in some of those photos, Floyd had both Todd Bates, Trent Wilson, David Stone, and Jaden Jackson in the photos. Like, this is my community. These are the guys. These are going to be my future defensive line brothers. If you wanted to read too much into one photograph, which, I'm a recruiting junkie, that's kind of what I do. It just looked like he had a very good visit to OU, and the sense of community that Todd Bates and Brent were selling was kind of landing. And so after that visit, the USC noise kind of quieted down a little bit. And for some odd reason, over the next couple of weeks, Miami and Bama seem to be focusing elsewhere. I kind of understand what Bama's doing. I think they're going to make a heavy run at Justice Terry, the elite freak defensive tackle from Georgia, who just visited Alabama. I'm not sure what Miami's doing. Maybe they're full. Maybe they're redirecting ships elsewhere. Or maybe they realized they were losing this recruiting battle, and it sounds better to say, well, we moved away from the kid rather than Oklahoma kicked our ass in recruiting again and took a player from Miami Central from us. Because Brent has been kind of shoving Mario Cristobal into a recruiting locker over the last 18 months. So he chose OU. Then it became clear that OU was moving into a lead. And then right before his recruiting, seemed to be that the word kind of leaked out a little bit that OU was going to be the choice. He did the whole hat fake out with Miami, and then chose the Sooners. So let's talk about what is OU getting in Floyd? Where is he ranked? Let's do the infamous ranking evaluation here, and see if I can get a better picture of Floyd there. That works better, I think. So Floyd is currently at Miami Central, and obviously his hometown is Montreal, Quebec. As you can see, he's ranked 400 in the 400s, in the high 400s right now by the On3 composite. And I'm not I'm not shilling On3's information here. It's just that it's just the easiest way to project all 4 rankings for you guys. Let me move back to you can see Floyd there. Let me move back so you've got the numbers a little clear on the screen. So he's 453rd in the nation and the 41st defensive lineman in the nation, according to the composite ranking. And as you can tell here, there's one service which obviously thinks highly of Floyd, and that's because he dominated a Rivals camp in Miami in February. So they're the ones that have seen him and have the best data point, I think. The other two ESPN has him around 27, which is the 27th defensive lineman, which is still too high, but he's right on the edge of being a 4-star. I don't know what On3 and 247 are doing with him as the 44th defensive lineman in the country. So let's just recap real quick. Boucard's badly underranked. His background playing in Quebec before being in Alabama. The school he played at, Mobile Christian, is a 3A, plays 3A ball in Alabama. So that probably didn't help either. However, he did help lead Mobile Christian to a 15-0 record with a state championship. So at some point, 3A ball in Alabama has some athletes in it. So he's playing somebody. So his stats were he had 85 tackles last year, 22 tackles for loss, and 11 sacks, primarily playing defensive end in a 3-man front. When we watch his footage here in a minute, you'll also see he moves inside, plays defensive tackle, will play nose in a 3-man front too. They moved him all over their defensive line. So you want to say it's 3A ball in Alabama. Okay. So the rule of thumb I have is anytime the question of competition comes up, which is legit, does the player dominate the competition they're playing? And as we'll see in the video, Floyd completely dominated the offenses he was playing last year. So I don't know quite. And again, this is huddle film. It's not like I'm looking at something that the networks can't look at. So I'm not sure where 247 and On3 come up with the 44th defensive lineman in the country ranking. It's just like Darius Afalava, a little bit like Omarius Robinson, and several other Sooner verbals. Usually it's just On3 that's been the outlier, but now you've got 247 as well. Floyd told me he is 6'4", 295 pounds. That was back in February. He also said that he'd been recently timed around 4'8" in the 40. So I have no reason to, whenever I ask kids that, I always get, very good, accurate information from them. So he's listed at 6'2.5". I've seen him listed at 6'3". Let's just say he's 6'3" for the sake of argument. Let's say he is now 315 pounds. He's a big guy, carries weight very well. He could have easily added 20 pounds over the last sort of 5-6 months. That's completely possible. But yeah, again, it's not a great defensive line class this year, and we'll get to that point a little bit more in this profile. So I've seen a lot of defensive line footage, looking at guys that I thought OU should offer, or looking at the guys OU did offer, and there's no way there's 43 guys on the defensive line, and we're confining that to nose guards, defensive tackles. I'm not talking about edge rushers, just interior defensive linemen. There's not 43 guys better, bigger, faster than Floyd. They don't exist. So it's just kind of crazy. So enough of the rankings nonsense. Let's go ahead and look at. Let's roll that back and start and looking at Floyd's footage from the beginning. So he's playing defensive end here. You see he's number 10. He's flying off, beating the offensive tackle and sacking the quarterback very easily there. See his lateral quickness there. He's just running through blockers and slamming the quarterback down there. You'll see here he's on the edge, does a nice spin move, beats the offensive tackle, and flattens the quarterback. Here inside, he's playing nose guard in this clip. See, throws away the offensive lineman and stuffs the running back right there. Again, he's playing again. He's coming off the edge, deflects the pass. He's very athletic. He has good agility, good lateral quickness, big guy, strong. As you can see, he's just consistently in the opponent's backfield, dominating offensive linemen. Forces a sack there, forces a fumble. Floyd is just a big guy making plays all over the field. So, he's powerful. He's explosive. He's got a really active motor. It's not one of these things where he's taking plays off. He's doing a really good job there. He gets the quarterback again, was doing a good job holding the edge. Again, here he's inside, pushes through, moving around, and then finally gets to the quarterback. Here he's double teamed and, keeps working, keeps pushing, and then, sacks the quarterback as they come up the middle to try and do a QB draw. So, I've seen videos from most of the top defensive tackles in the country. Not everybody, but a lot of folks. And if you put aside Justice Terry, who I just talked about, and Elijah Griffin, the defensive tackle from Savannah, the other 5-star from Georgia, those are the David Stone guys in the class, really. You put them aside, and then you put aside Malik Autry, the Alabama defensive tackle who's verbal to Auburn, who's a top 30 5-star guy right now. The only other guy I think really in the big defensive tackle conversation is Josiah Sharma from California, who's going to Oregon. I think those two are probably, very close. I think Floyd's more athletic and Sharma is probably a little more complete right now in terms of a player. There DJ Sanders from Texas maybe is somewhere in that list. But when we're talking big defensive tackles, OU tried to bring in Brandon Brown from Florida that LSU and Texas were fighting over. Floyd's much better than those guys, or at least he has much bigger potential than Brown. Floyd's bigger, longer, faster, more explosive. And again, I'm not comparing him to any 3-techs, but, OU already has a 3-tech in Trent Wilson. So, and they have a nose guard in Kamori Moore. So OU, if they're going to add another defensive tackle piece of this class, you want it to be somebody like Floyd who could play inside nose, also play defensive tackle. You could also use him as a defensive end in a big three down lineman scheme, depending upon how you wanted to do things. He's just got amazing flexibility for OU in terms of how they could use him in the defensive front. His potential is just sky high. I mean, this clip is just running and you're just seeing him consistently making tackles, consistently in the backfield, making explosive plays. They're moving him all around the line to keep teams from, just crush that running play right there. He's just a very good defensive tackle. He's just got lots of potential. Some of these highlights are now playing tight end, which I imagine is pretty brutal for folks in 3A football in Alabama. Tight end that big. So, Floyd is just on film. Again, I'm baffled by this 44th player in the nation at D-line ranking. His film's amazing. Gabe Eichard was just talking about him on their podcast, The Oklahoma Breakthrough. And he was just saying, to paraphrase him, I don't understand how someone this big, that fast, that agile, is the number 44 player in the nation. I just don't get it. He was saying, someone please explain this to me. And I would kind of concur on that. So what is OU getting from Floyd? What does this do for OU defensive line recruiting? So OU now has 3 interior defensive linemen. You've got Kamori Moore from Missouri, who's been verbaled for over a year. He's a pure nose guard. He'll end up, his best projection potential is something along the lines of Isaiah Coe with bigger wingspan. Kamori's got an absurd wingspan for a 6'1" guy. But you want to get him to like 300, 305, 310, built up by Schmitty perfectly, and then he's going to be a really good nose guard for you. Then you got Trent Wilson, who's I think is the best 3 tech in the country, and I mean 3 tech. 6'3", 285 now, will be like 290, 295 in Norman. Powerful, fast, explosive, that classic burst you want from a 3 tech that we got so used to seeing from Tommy and Dusty. And we saw, we saw from Gerald to a certain degree, although Gerald's just so versatile, what OU could do with him because of his size and his length, and his speed, his agility. But Trent's a classic 3 tech, and that's what this defense needs, a nose guard and a 3 tech. So what Floyd gives you is he can play both of those positions. You can mix and match him. He's an every down defensive tackle, which is really, when you're talking defensive line recruiting, which is sort of the holy grail of recruiting at this point, right? And then when you talk defensive line recruiting, an every down defensive tackle, regardless of scheme, down and distance, is the holiest grail of D-line recruiting. David Stone is one of those players. Jaden Jackson is probably one of those players. 2 years ago, DJ Hicks, again, one of those guys. Elijah Griffin, Justice Terry, the number 4 and 5 players in the nation are those guys. That's why Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, everybody's fighting. And Clemson, everyone's fighting over them. So for OU to get, now, again, he's raw, but, we've got Todd Bates coaching him up. So, that to me mitigates some of the floor risk and has me focusing more on the ceiling. This is, to get, he's a 4-star. I think he should be a top 200 player in the nation. And we'll see what happens with him playing at Miami Central and getting more publicity, more eyes, probably a couple of TV games. See what happens there when he plays better competition. But I think he should be a top 200 player in the nation. In a defensive line class that, other than these names I mentioned, Myron Charles is kind of a bigger defensive end, but he also could be like a 3 tech. He's from Florida. I believe he chose Florida over Texas. Sorry, he chose FSU over Texas. So there's just not many of those guys. There's good edge rushers in this class. Defensive ends, Marion Dye, Damian Shanklin, Isaiah Gibson, players like that. But they're not defensive tackles, although, Gibson could go there and could project there. But for the most part, they're all big defensive ends or pass rushing defensive ends. So when you're just talking big defensive tackles right now, for OU to get one of these guys, then combine him with Trent Wilson, who was ranked as high as number 30 in the nation by On3 before they started messing, and fumbling around with their rankings and shifting him around to like number 180 in the nation. So On3, were you right when he was 30 or are you right when he's 180? Because you can't be right both times. That big a gap of rating doesn't work, especially with him not having played a single football game in between. But I digress there. So for OU to get 2 4-star top 200 type defensive tackles in this relatively weak year for D-line, and especially weak in the state, in the OU's region. Because, like I said, in terms of a big defensive tackle, Floyd is better than anybody in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, or Missouri. Trent Wilson is a better three-tech than anybody in those states as well. He's a better three-tech than Landon Rink, who OU recruited and is heading to A&M. I think he's better than Cole Brewer from New Jersey, that OU lost out to Stanford. So I think at three-tech, OU got the best guy they could find. And then I think in terms of just availability and who they could get, they got the best big defensive tackle that they could add to the roster. When you take a look at that photo and you see Jaden Jackson, David Stone, Trent Wilson, and now Floyd Boucard, that's a 4 deep of 4-star, potentially elite defensive tackles for OU to have in their rotation. And then you've got Kamori Moore, who, again, I don't want to downplay. He'll be a very good. He could be a very good nose guard for OU, but he's not going to be a top 200 player in the nation. He's not going to get anywhere close to that ranking just because his height, just pure and simple. They're not going to rank him higher than that because he's 6 foot, 6'1". If he was 6'3", he'd be, based on his film and how he plays, he'd be a top 300, top 200 player in the nation. But he's not. So you can see this building of talent. You've got Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong also in the mix, as well as they come out of their redshirt seasons and hopefully start to have more of an impact on the defensive line roster play. Although, with DeJohn Terry and Damian Williams, it's going to be, Dominic Williams, it's going to be hard to get them a lot of playing time. But, they're still developing. This is Todd Bates', that's his skill. On Twitter, I'd like to say that, just imagine if Neville Gallimore had been coached by Todd Bates and developed strength and conditioning wise by Schmitty for 4 years. I think he would have been a better prospect than a better defensive tackle and a better NFL prospect. And all kudos to Calvin Thibodeau working in that what could not have been an easy environment as a defensive coach under Riley during 18-19. But I think, Neville would have been better. So imagine that. Then imagine Neville Gallimore is 6'3", 315 instead of, 6'2", 285, 290. And then you see the potential of what Floyd could be. So this is a big addition. And then the other part of this is OU had no backup plans behind Floyd in terms of big defensive tackles. They were trying to add Kay Pietrek, and Caleb and I on previous, Caleb Cummings and I on the Sooners360 podcasts have been talking about, we felt like he was actually a defensive tackle, not a defensive end. That's where his value would end up being. So he chose Nebraska, and OU got Floyd Boucard, and then he chose Nebraska the next day. And OU appears to be shutting down interior defensive line recruiting and defensive end recruiting for now. We'll see. I think they still need it on the rush end, but we'll see how that shakes out. But like I said, Floyd's a huge addition. This is a big win. And again, there were no other players in the fold, no other offers, no one else being really considered. So it wasn't quite Floyd or bust, but it was pretty close to that. So thanks, everyone. That's my profile on Floyd Boucard. Go ahead and please click like and subscribe. And also please visit patreon.com/Sooners360-817 to subscribe for more recruiting content and to support these videos on YouTube. Thanks, everyone.